Let's talk about what we saw last night. We've been talking this morning about that debate, 8 people on the stage minus Donald Trump. What did you make of what you heard?
I mean, it made me realize how thankful I am to have Joe Biden as a partner inside this work. I mean, there were 8 people on stage and one worldview. And the singular worldview was divisive. The singular worldview was there's a specific playbook that they were all playing to, but there's no plan. And, you know, and I think about it where we watched 8 people on the stage talk about things like, national abortion bans. We watched 8 people on stage talk about how much they would want to cut Medicaid and Social Security. We watched 8 people obviously say that law and order doesn't matter because convictions to them wouldn't matter. So, and the thing that was really, I think, really alarming for me is, I'm going around the state of Maryland all the time. And I don't care what part of the state of Maryland I'm going to, in Democratic areas or traditionally historically voting Republican areas. What they were saying was not speaking to them. And I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing the conversations about national abortion bans. I'm not hearing conversations about, is climate change a hoax, when 70% of my state is water-lined or water-locked areas. And we see the impacts of this every single day. So they just weren't speaking to the people of my state, or frankly, I'm just not sure who they were actually speaking to us.
I guess the question to you that we've been asking Republicans and conservatives this morning is, did anything we saw last night matter? In other words, if you've got a guy in Donald Trump who's up by 40 points or 30 points, pick your poll, did that matter last night, or was it just instructive to understand the worldview of the party at this point? Yeah,
I mean, well, especially when you watch people stand up and line up and say that, regardless of the fact that we now have a person who's going to be on trial for things like trying to overthrow democracy.
Yeah.
A person who's on trial for things like stealing nuclear codes, and I tell this, as a combat vet myself, the idea that you would sacrifice the safety of people who wear the uniform of this country, and you're on trial for that, and regardless of what a jury or a judge says, you're saying, I would still support them to lead. I think that was it was remarkably dangerous. And the thing that I think about and why I'm excited and enthusiastic to continue to support the Biden administration is the work that's happening right now. We see it every day, and it matters. Right? I can tell you in the state of Maryland, the work that we've already done, the partnerships that we have done, the fact that we're putting $267 million into broadband expansion, where the end of my first term, I want the entire state covered with affordable and accessible broadband. And that's in both Democratic and Republican areas. The fact that we have now put, the state of Maryland alone has received over $3.5 billion from the Infrastructure Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which is going to fix roads and bridges and tunnels. The Frederick Douglass Tunnel in Baltimore alone is going to be worth 30,000 jobs. That's real stuff, and it's not performative talking points. That's real economic impacts that changes the trajectory for families. So I don't think much changed last night, because I think people are seeing on the ground the fact that we have an administration, and frankly, as a governor, I have a partner who's actually making things happen in people's lives.
Governor, one of the things that perhaps struck more than a few people is the lack of emphasis or discussion last night about something that, in your travels around Maryland might bear this out, that's at the core of family life, average American families. Yeah. The grammar school and high school education of their children. There was no discussion of that last night. And it seems somewhat that most of the Republican Party is really interested in public schools, public school libraries, about restricting books and banning books. But in your travels around your state, what do you hear about the need to improve public education?
I'm hearing that we need a public school education system that's training our children how to read and do math. I'm hearing that we need an education system that is going to teach our students how not just to be employees, but how to be employers, and to actually drive economic growth. I'm hearing that we want an education system that's starting earlier, because we know that 80% of brain development happens in a child by the time that child is 5 years old. So why we have children starting school at 5 makes absolutely no sense. I'm hearing that we have an education system and need an education system that's going to invest in career technical education. Because while I'm proud of the fact that in the state of Maryland, we have some of the best four-year institutions in the country, we are also going to end this myth that every single one of our students have to attend one of them, in order to be economically successful. But the thing that we're seeing is that the investments that have been made within our state, the investments that have been made in partnership with what we're seeing from the Biden administration, that's actually hitting people where they are. That's actually making sure that we can have a high quality public school education system that is going to prepare our students for not just the jobs of now, but also for the jobs of the future. And the distraction, the shiny object of focusing on things like book bans and telling people that books like Beloved and Between the World and Me should somehow be banned from children's educational roster. It's not only a distraction. It's not only offensive, but what it's also doing, it's getting us away from the core elements of public school educational supports that the Biden administration is pushing, that us at the state levels have been making sure they're being reinforced in our states, and really making sure that we're focusing on creating a long-term sustainable and competitive economy that everyone can benefit from and not just some people.
Governor Moore, nice to say that. This campaign pitch from the Biden-Harris team is pretty similar to 2020 in that they're stressing this is extreme MAGA, and to save democracy, you've got to keep Joe Biden in office. Does that pitch work a second go-round?
I think about this idea of democracy deeply. I heard last night repeatedly from a few of the people on stage this term patriotism and why patriotism matters. And the thing is, I agree, but not that brand. Because patriotism actually means sustaining of democracy and fighting for basic values that everyone in our country should hold true. You cannot claim that you love the country when you hate half of the people in it. You can't claim that you love the country when the policies that you're putting together are intentionally divisive and intentionally keeping people excluded from seeing how they are actually involved and engaged in this. And so I think the strategy that we've continued to see and why the danger of the extreme MAGA movement, it's not just that this is an ideology that is starting to and continuing to erode at the basic fabric of democracy, the basic fabric of freedoms that I think for all of us not only we hold true, but we will fight for and defend. It's also not getting at the core challenges that people are actually facing, because it allows us to get caught up in the distractions. Right? So instead of focusing on things like how do we make sure that we have sustained job growth, and I can tell you right now, we're watching historic levels of unemployment, historically low levels of unemployment. In the state of Maryland, we're going on 5 straight months of historically low unemployment. The fact that we're talking about inflation, well, we have now seen inflation that's now at its lowest level since 2021, and where the United States has the lowest inflation rate of any of the G7 countries. We want to talk about infrastructure and building. We're now having core assets, billions of dollars that are being put towards roads and bridges. That's both getting people to work in terms of fixing it, and also giving people the opportunity to get to work, because you can't have economic mobility if you don't have physical mobility. So what's happening is you're watching a campaign and a reelect that's saying the momentum that we're seeing and the partnership that we're seeing with our federal government, it matters. And that's the thing that we want to make sure we have 4 more years of.